So that we're going to get started. Okay. So welcome all to the second working group meeting. We have a good group here today. We want to make this really interactive and engaging. But the first thing that we want to do is review the feedback from the first meeting that we held about a month ago, just to kind of take a look at it and potentially add some notes, add some additional points to it. So we are going to start here with what we learned from our first worksheet, which is what is working, what is not working. So these are all comments from the first working group meeting. So related to education, what's working? We have a historical environment in the community where people have a link between the different schools in the neighborhood. That's been working over time. There is, let's see, the scholarship opportunities that are available. E.E. Smith has rich history and community connections in particular. The location of E.E. Smith is very central and is recognized as a community asset. The elementary and high schools are important to the community and are community focused overall. We have action pathways, regional food bank, and E.E. Smith and FSU generally have a strong relationship. They're joined at the hip. So what is not working related to education that was brought up in our first meeting here? I think there's some potential negativity around the idea of moving E.E. Smith High School to another location, that there is not enough information about current and future plans for E.E. Smith to really make recommendations about what should happen there, that there's generally a lack of effective tutoring programs. The programs are insufficient or not useful. There's not enough teaching support. The need to increase middle school capacity in the neighborhood was brought up. Very little public internet access, and that's actually something we're tackling right now through this choice initiative. We have an early action project called the Digital Equity Initiative, where we're looking to install free Wi-Fi within key locations within the neighborhood. So that's one of our goals in 2022 is to get that going, starting at Murchison townhouses and then moving on to other prominent locations within the community. Somebody said, need a middle school, need to leave E.E. Smith where it is, need additional preschool and tutoring support to help students meet identified learning outcomes. So that was related to education, job training. Obviously, these things are very linked together. But what's working at NC Works is now a career center. The Next Gen program that they have starts at age 16. So that's something that could be really, it could be utilized by local youth. Action Pathways is a summer program for teenagers, including internships, and that the program helps people continue working as they conduct their internships. The Partnership for Children is willing to work with teen parents seeking employment to find childcare and subsidy. So these are existing programs that are available. What may not be working as well, somebody asked about the JTPA program. I can't remember what that stood for. If anybody knows, you can put it in the chat. Facilities are spread out and not efficient via public transportation, so that's a challenge. There's a lack of shelters for women and families experiencing homelessness, and this has also been brought up in a couple of our other working groups. We're not capturing or capitalizing on FSU talent as much as we could, and there's generally a high commercial vacancy rate. And again, we have a housing and commercial working group that met this morning, so we're trying to deal with that particular issue as well. But before I go on, just want to see if anyone has any other thoughts here on some of these points that are working, what aren't working. Is there anything we're really missing? If you weren't able to come to the first meeting, is there anything you'd like to add to this part of the worksheet? Feel free to take yourself off mute or just put it in the chat, whatever feels most comfortable.
I did miss the first meeting, Adam, but I was kind of wondering whether or not if we maybe took some of what the students from E.E. Smith said and incorporated that as well, or if we could.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I remember the thing that they said loud and clear was the idea of establishing a Boys and Girls Club. And I know that has been brought up multiple times within the neighborhood. So something that could be very central. So I think we should definitely consider that, and we'll go back and reflect on their feedback as well. Thanks for bringing that up. So JTPA is the Job Training Partnership Act of 1982. There's a program that Johnette mentioned in the chat. Multi-generational housing is something I'm seeing as well. So I'm guessing, so Francis Jackson, is that a need, or is that something that is currently working in the neighborhood?
Oh, I was just thinking that it could be a need. We have, I work in the school system. We have a lot of grandparents, and we talk about housing parents who raise grandchildren. And then you have a military retiree community where I've heard feedback that they would like something, instead of living in the multi-family units they live in now, they would have something a little more simpler for those guys who are retired or approaching retirement. So I was thinking along those lines.
Yep, absolutely. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. So the next point worksheet that we talked about was desired outcomes. So this builds off of that first sheet. And you can see some things are overlapping a little bit here, but for education, some of the outcomes that were brought up at the first meeting was scholarship opportunities for local students, letting people know that we care about them in general, utilizing media outlets to advertise resources and pathways. And one resource that is coming up, actually a couple of resources. On Monday, we're having a small business expo for businesses along the Murchison corridor. And if you're interested in knowing more about that, the information's on our website at murchisonchoice.com. And in March, we're planning on holding a second career resource day and career fair in tandem with FTCC and NC Works. So we're trying to get the word out. We're trying to bring more resources to the community through the Choice program. Other outcomes, sharing the community's rich history. And we actually have a history and inclusion working group that met yesterday. So they're brainstorming on ideas around that. The pride of E.E. Smith and FSU throughout the corridor, improved resources in the area around E.E. Smith, building life skills beyond education, improving consumer education, financial literacy, improved nutritional education, thinking about community health, ensuring internet access and digital literacy, helping the homeless population within the neighborhood, expanding the Head Start program, long-term sustainability of any programs. So I think that's a big point that was brought up, not just establishing a program for a year or two, but making sure it has adequate funding and resources to go forward in the long term. Consistency and follow through, paid internships that are available. FSU replenish the supply of teachers in the community. And then in terms of job training, the notes in green came from one of our other working groups, but they were talking about the transportation being difficult, reentry programs, changing the laws around that, starting from the top down to create access to viable jobs, a one-stop shop for resources and education, strong supportive services. Let's see, that people are work ready. It's just a matter of connecting the dots, retaining local talent from FSU, breaking down silos between different organizations and different programs, training people to operate these new programs. We heard today in our housing and commercial working group that one of the nonprofits on the call mentioned that they want to build affordable housing, but the cost for construction and kind of skilled trade is so high, and they can't actually find people that know how to build. And so we were thinking about how do we bridge that gap? Reducing the number of vacant buildings, also another thing that's being touched on by our commercial working group, and utilizing existing infrastructure. Locally owned businesses take over vacant commercial spaces, teachers and nurses stay after completing their clinicals, and FSU graduates start businesses here. So that's a lot. Those are all kind of desired outcomes. So if we could start to achieve success through this this particular group and this program, those are some of the goals that we want to hit. So the first two working groups, I just wanted to share this with you. They looked at a whole list of project ideas and worked together to rank those ideas through polling, which is about what we're going to do in a minute here. But I just wanted to share because there is some overlap between the groups. So the top projects for history are shown here based on the working group meeting yesterday. Top projects for equity and inclusion are right here from 1 to 3. The top projects for housing and the top projects for commercial development. And you can see that inventory of vacant buildings and potential reuses was the #1 ranked project there. So I just wanted to kind of share that to put this in context with the other groups. So what we're going to do now is do a little interactive polling about some of these ideas that have been coming up. So let me get that going here for us. So you should see something pop up that it's from a site called Mentimeter, which is our online polling website. So you can, I think you can add that to your Zoom and you'll be able to access the poll right in Zoom. The other way you could do it is by going to this link in the chat. And then there's one other way you could do it, and I'll show you in a second when I share my screen. But if you're not comfortable doing the polling, that's fine. If you're not able, if you're driving or whatever, you can, you'll either be able to just put your thoughts in the chat, or you can unmute and just tell us about it. So let's get started. So we have, let me share my screen. And so if everyone wants to go to the Mentimeter poll, we have kind of a softball question to start, which is who's going to win the Super Bowl. And this is really just to kind of make sure everybody's comfortable with the polling and the platform. So we'll give everybody a couple minutes. Another way you can do it is that right on the top there, it says go to menti.com and use the code 34250295. That'll bring you right to the poll. So you can either vote for the Los Angeles Rams to win. You can, if you think the Bengals are going to take it, you can vote for the Bengals. If you don't care about football at all and you just want to watch the commercials, or you just want to eat delicious Super Bowl food, then pick that choice. So we'll give everybody a minute just to get comfortable here with the polling before we go on to the hard questions. All right, see, we got a pretty equal vote so far with the Super Bowl question. Oh, somebody mentioned that their poll is blocked by their system, so that's fine. You can just, so I think that is Dr. Newton. Yeah, you'll be able to. You can just put your feedback in the chat as well if you're not able to access the poll. So we got man, at least the majority is voting for the Bengals, which I'm pulling for the Bengals. I have my wife is from Ohio, so I kind of have to. We got 4 votes for the Rams and about 4 that only care about the commercials. So, all right, so let's go on to the next question, which is really where we're getting started here. Oh, man, people are already voting on this. So there's 2 people that took the poll already. So the next question. We have a whole list of project ideas, obviously, and desired outcomes we're hoping to achieve. So we've taken 9 of the ideas related to education, and these are ideas that came from the community as a whole, from our community workshops, from our community conversations with our ambassadors, as well as the first working group meeting. And we want your prioritization in terms of strategies of these different ideas. So I'll go through them, and then you can feel free to vote along each of the 9 ideas overall. So the first is fostering adult education programs. The second would be to develop a youth enrichment center in the neighborhood. The third would be creating a senior youth mentorship program where elders are working directly with young people in the neighborhood around different topics. The third would be expanding before and after school programs. The fourth would be, I'm sorry, that was fourth. These aren't in any order really, because you're going to be ranking them. But the next one is expanding access and utilization of current Smith Rec Center programs. Knowing that there's a lot that goes on there, at least pre-COVID, there was definitely a lot. And we need to figure out how to get people tied into those existing programs. The next is expanding the Head Start program with internship opportunities as well for potentially people in the neighborhood that want to work in the Head Start program and learn those skills. Let's see, creating new STEAM programs and partnerships. So these are technology programs for local youth within the neighborhood. The next would be creating a financial literacy credit repair program. And that's something that we've heard from our housing working group as well. And I believe the final project is creating tutoring programs with E.E. Smith and FSU students kind of at the lead to establish tutoring for the younger youth within the neighborhood. So this is our first question. The next question will be about job training, but this is more specific to education. So let's take about 5 minutes. Hopefully everybody gets a chance to take a look at this and weigh in, because the top projects that come out of this polling are going to be the ones that we focus on as a group going forward. So again, we'll give everybody a few minutes, and if you're not able to do the polling, you can put your thoughts in the chat as well, and then we'll open it up for discussion. Thanks.
For those who just joined the call, feel free to follow the link at the top of the page and enter the code so that you can also participate in the poll.
All right, I'd like to kind of open up the discussion now. So in terms of the results of the poll, you can see them on the screen, but I'll just review the top here. And they're still shuffling around a little bit as people finish up. But it looks like the top, at least the top three. So the first was creating a tutoring program utilizing E.E. Smith and FSU students. So that was the number one ranked project overall. And we still have more people coming into the room, so that's awesome. The second ranked project, and if you're just joining us right now, you can go to menti.com and put the code in. That's at the top of the screen there. If you'd like to do the poll and participate. But the second project idea was expanding before and after school programs. And the third project idea looks like we have a tie at this point between fostering adult education programs and developing a youth enrichment center within the neighborhood. So I would like to open it up for comments and feedback. So you can tell us why you voted the way you did. You know, you can lobby for one of these projects over another, or if you just have general thoughts you want to share with the group. So go ahead and feel free to take yourself off mute. You can also raise your hand if you'd like. I'll try to call on people, but just feel free to jump in, or if you have thoughts, you can put it in the chat as well. Anyone want to get us started?
Well, I do have a comment. Looking at the tutoring programs, utilizing the students at E. Smith and FSU, I do think that's a great idea. However, in the past, when I have worked in programs as such, I don't know about the impact that it will have. It may be good as far as, they have a mentor or they have a buddy or someone that they can look up to. But if that in the say when we tutored was not really the pay, but it was just the effectiveness, the curriculum, how they're being taught. And when you start talking about tutoring, you definitely want to look at results to make sure that the students are growing and it doesn't become a babysitting program. And that's what a lot of tutors felt like, that students are coming, and it's more so like you're focusing on behaviors, you're helping them with homework, but it's no consistent plan. So if that were to take place, it would definitely need to be someone, or it would need to be led or initiated by someone who is familiar with the curriculum and the standards, and not turn into more of a babysitting or after school care program, because that's totally different. But I do think it's a great idea.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And thanks for sharing that. The idea of like having a solid curriculum to follow, and rather than just kind of freestyling the whole thing. Thanks.
Exactly.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome.
So I would add, so it was kind of difficult to rank, not really knowing what we're trying to achieve overall, whether it's youth, whether it's adult, but certainly I think both of those go hand in hand. You can't, I think that you're missing a piece if you're so focused on youth that there's no resources for the adult who is really responsible for the self-sufficiency of the family. And so I think a little more context would have helped me, but using my own context, certainly you got to have some resources for adults, so that they can ensure that they can take care of their families, which in result helps for a more stable community. So I'm not lobbying for any one particular thing, but I'm really, trying to figure out what the overall goal would be for education, what we're trying to achieve.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. I saw there was a note in the chat, I think from Dom, about Head Start. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, myself, and I'm speaking personally, I have a young child that there's no room for Head Start, and to accept her, daycares as well, especially with COVID happening. there were several different learning institutions that basically shut down, and they said there was not enough staff to fulfill those positions. And I appreciate, everyone saying that we need more programs for adults, and we certainly have those programs, but what's missing is the aspect for the children. And I feel like we need to capture the youth before it gets to a point where they're in their adulthood and they're trying to find those resources. If we can give those resources to them while they're still young, then they 9 times out of 10 wouldn't find themselves in situations where they're, in trouble. Hence the before and after school program, or, a youth enrichment center, or same thing with like Head Start with intern opportunities. That's jobs, and that's trying to, maintain the youth as well. And you have a lot of parents that cannot work because they don't have the staff to watch the children at Head Start or daycares or stuff like that. So that's why I find it necessary to lobby for Head Start.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your experience with that. I'm curious if other people have had the same challenges recently with related to COVID, not having programs available, not being able to get into programs because they're too crowded, and that kind of thing. So if anyone else wants to share about that, we'd love to hear about
Well, I can definitely speak to that.
Okay.
Childcare was in crisis before COVID because childcare providers are paid so poorly. It doesn't attract people to the field, and we've been losing people in the field way before COVID. COVID happened, it made it 10 times worse. So we at the Partnership for Children, we help connect families to childcare, and we educate them about high quality childcare, but we're having trouble actually finding vacant slots or vacancies for the children to go to, and then the parents have to wait. And a lot of it has to do with staffing. It's not just COVID, it's the staffing crisis has just gotten a lot worse. And we have to start putting investments in the childcare industry, because if you get education, you're able to find a great job, and you have children, you need to have a place to put your children so that you can work. So I think it's really important to focus on early childhood education. I mean, it's not just having a place to put your child, it also establishes an education foundation for young children, because their brain grows more than any time in their life, the first 2,000 days of their life. And so if they are getting if they're getting nurtured and exposed to enriched environments where they can be learning and interacting with other children, that's going to help them be successful throughout their education, and then when they enter the workforce. So we are in a crisis situation, and we need to be able to find a way to make the field more attractive for people to go into. We want the best and the brightest with our young children, and that's not happening because for some reason that monetary value is not being put on it. So yeah, we're in a crisis situation.
Thanks for sharing that perspective, Candy. I see Cynthia has her hand up. Cynthia?
Yes, I had a question for Ms. Scott. What a great point. COVID just brought all of this to a head. But back, in the day, churches used to have daycares, really good daycares. And do you know why they have kind of faded away?
Well, I can speak from personal experience because I worked for a childcare facility that was housed in a very large Methodist church. Mm-hmm. And the churches go into it thinking that they're going to actually make money from the childcare. Mm-hmm. That doesn't happen because to provide quality childcare, it requires a lot of money. Because there's licensing regulations, you have to adhere to ratios as far as staff and children together, and they end up actually losing money. And then the church is then putting the money that they have thought they set aside for the church into the childcare, and that just doesn't work.
That doesn't work.
Yeah. So yeah, it's mostly a money issue.
It's a money issue. Well, with the new, you know, I try to keep up with some of the federal funding, you know, that was passed here recently. Are you, do you know anything about what's coming or what the, you know, what's?
Well, right now they have stabilization grants for
Mhm.
childcare, which is great. A good percentage, I think like almost 80% of the providers in the state have taken advantage of the stabilization grants. And so they're able to keep the staff that they have and actually make some improvements. So that's been great. I mean, COVID in a way has been a blessing because it's brought all this to light and now
Right.
we're putting money
Yeah.
towards it. But the thing is the structure to support all that, the infrastructure to support
Right.
all that really isn't
Is
there,
yeah.
you know, or it's not strong enough to figure out how to spend all this money. And so we're running into roadblocks as far as that's concerned. And we can't depend on the money to continue to come
Right.
either.
Right.
So we're taking advantage of what we can. And, you know, and I think that's why some programs have not closed. But that still hasn't helped with the staffing issues much.
It's much.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. It's
welcome.
interesting.
So I would chime in. So Action Pathways, we have a grant called the Child Care Partnership. And this particular grant, we are allowed to work with a private provider to provide additional support in increasing the quality of care. And so this allows us to utilize some federal funds to help support maybe a faith-based organization that is wanting or that has a child care facility, but maybe if we look at, you know, usually when you look at these child care facilities, you know, you have a 5-star, 4-star, one being your lowest star. They may start out at a 2-star, and so you use these funds to elevate them to a higher star, which means the quality of care is increasing.
Mhm.
Programs like that we need more programs like that to support those who like to endeavor into childcare but don't have the funds. Now, this is not a program that lasts forever, but certainly it would help them with, I guess, gathering additional resources over a 5-year period. And so we work with about, I think, 6 or 7 different providers wherein we help them increase the quality. And some of that is providing financial support.
And what's the age range for that?
It's 0 to, well, it's anywhere from 0 to 5.
Mhm.
That's another piece is that, you know, we've had these slots for 3 and 4-year-olds, but not much for infants and toddlers.
Right.
So these children need quality education as well. And so we've actually had some of our slots converted to try to meet that gap, but it's so big in our community. I mean, we could stand for a lot more providers, but the younger the child is, the more it costs to care for them. It's probably double the cost for infant toddler than a 3
Yeah.
or 4-year-old in terms of providing that service. So, as Ms. Scott said, if you have a church, you know, unless you have lots of funds, and you certainly are not going to be able to charge the parents the amount to be able to break even, because I mean, in many of these cases, these are folks who are, you know, part of working poor. You know, they're working every day and trying to afford daycare or childcare rather. So it's problematic on that end as well.
Wow.
Yeah, thank you for that insight. It's really important for us to understand. See, Lamont has his hand up. You want to go next, Lamont?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And this is Frederick Lowe, by the way. My my screen name is my middle name for some reason. I do not know why. But if any educators are on the phone, I do have a question as far as overtime pay. I know teachers are on salary. Um, how are they able to achieve overtime?
Well, in my district, we don't really offer overtime. Now, if a teacher is, let's say a teacher is teaching at a high school and there are 4 class periods in a day, they're allotted 1 free class period, right? But let's say for some reason they are covering and they're not getting a break at all, then the principal will submit a form to HR and we will pay them for that, extra time that they're supposed to have, to themselves or the plan for that. And then additionally, if they want to make extra funds through like Title I funds with tutoring and after school care, things of that nature, we do provide extra funding for that. But there's not a lot of, oh, if you're working at 7 o'clock, you get overtime as you would like on a traditional job like Goodyear. It's really, teachers really do a lot for less, to put
Right.
it in so many words.
Yeah, and that's what I was wondering because and I feel like I don't know exactly how. It was just something I was thinking of while we were talking about demanding demands of teachers and qualified workers in the field that's really needed to meet the demands of, the children as well. But I feel like when it comes to incentives and when it comes to added benefits, I don't know if it's county level or if it's within this program that we're in right now that can help provide those incentives. But I do know, for example, officers, they're able to work for clubs and restaurants and other places at a certain pay rate, on top of still holding down their position as far as what they do. And I just wasn't sure if a teacher could be have incentives for being available for 2 extra hours for prime time or 2 or 3 extra hours after school towards a program that, of the things that we're talking about right now, what we are needing. If any of that grant money or anything can go towards that, and it's something, I guess, to where they could sign up for the school year, and we have the select individuals that we know that we can count on throughout that school year for certain days out the week, and they receive certain incentive funds for being available. And then just as we provide substitute teachers for the school as well, we can still utilize our substitute teachers or so forth for that incentive program for those after school needs as well.
I think that's a good idea because a lot of times
That's a great suggestion.
they do get extra funds, Title I funds. And then recently last year with COVID, we had something called ESSER funds that were used. So I think that's a great idea. And you probably would have more teachers that are willing to do that with those type of incentives in place. But sometimes, teachers, depending on the school, they're not compensated extra for tutoring. That's just part of, but, we have APN, which is the Army Youth Program for military students, where sometimes teachers are compensated extra to tutor for that. But I think what you're talking about, I think that's a great idea.
I do too.
Yeah, I feel like it really attract people, attract more teachers to here, and then we could be the leaders of it. And, education is something that's really needed in this community, program that we are creating right now. And with one of my aunts that raised me, she's a retired principal twice. And just she volunteered her time just because she wanted to. And because she knew what the community needed in several ways for E.E. Smith and many other middle schools and elementaries that she was a principal at. And I'm just like, wow, she's not even looking for compensation, but I can imagine those and the times that we are in now that could actually be compensated for actually, just wanting to make a difference.
Absolutely. Great idea. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to move us on to the next question because we have we have about 35 minutes left in the session. I want to make sure we hit it. So if you're okay, let's just go on here. So the next question is, how would you rank the following job training strategies in terms of importance? So we have 8 different strategies or potential projects here. We have create a community resource center or a hub that could be in any number of locations within the neighborhood. And people have brought up, the former Walmart or the E.E. Smith campus if E.E. Smith goes away. The second would be establishing a kind of a formal innovation district designation in the neighborhood that could potentially unlock different types of resources and partnerships, potentially with Fort Bragg, with FSU. Maybe there could be something really unique set up. The third would be establishing business and financial classes for local residents. The fourth would be enhancing communications about existing programs. Again, that's a big one that comes up often. The fifth, establishing an NC Works satellite office directly within the neighborhood. The sixth would be creating additional local workshops and hiring fairs. And I mentioned we have one coming up in March, but if that's something that you all think is absolutely critical, please, vote for that one as well. The next would be, let's see, creating an apprenticeship internship program with local businesses to support hiring. And the last would be expanding the child care subsidy program. So that kind of gets to some of the topics that we got into a little bit previously. So everyone just take a few minutes here, think about these 8 different strategies and how you would rank them in order of importance.
Really quick, Adam, can you explain what you mean by establish an innovation district?
Yeah, so that would really have to be kind of a city designation that would potentially put resources in place for certain types of businesses to come to this area. We would really have to think about, how that all gets put together. But there's some good case studies for that type of designation, which could also unlock different funding opportunities and different grant sources. If you're in a municipally designated innovation district, you may be able to acquire resources. So we'd have to really strategize on what that might look like and how it could be framed. But I think the key partners obviously would be FSU and potentially Fort Bragg as being anchor partners for such a district that's designated in the Murchison area. We'll give everybody just 1 or 2 more minutes to finish up. All right, looks like with 14 votes in, we've landed on generally a top 3 here, which I can quickly go over. So the first is expanding childcare subsidy program. Next is creating a community resource center or hub within the neighborhood. The third looks like is going to be enhancing communications about existing programs. With the fourth, just below it, is an apprenticeship internship program with local businesses. So if you haven't voted yet, feel free to continue to look over the choices and vote, but want to open it up for discussion again. It looks like that childcare seems to be the root of many of these ideas or challenges within the community, both related to education and job training. So I'd love to hear more about that if anybody wants to weigh in.
Yeah, I want to talk about the word expand because I was talking about before, we're not able to spend the subsidy dollars we already have because the workforce isn't supporting it. So, so putting more money into subsidy doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you can't spend what we have. But this is the thing that we could think about when we talk about expanding childcare subsidy programs. So DSS will not pay subsidy for students or job-seeking parents. So, you know, we're talking about education and job training. So these are people that you know, are getting what they need to have their careers. So if we can focus on maybe expanding the eligibility requirements for subsidy, I think that would be probably the better strategy.
I have a question about that, Candy. That's a really like important distinction that you're pointing out. So this funding for the childcare subsidy, where is it coming from? I am wondering because like I don't know. I wonder if it comes like from federal funding, like it comes with additional ties in the money. So how do we get around those?
It's a combination of federal and state funds.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it looks like create a community resource center has jumped to the top of the list here. Does anybody want to talk a little bit about their thoughts about why they rank that so high?
Well, in just talking, this is Jeanette, and just talking with the community and sort of having experience in running a what we call a family resource center out of Virginia. It just served as a hub, and it was like a clearinghouse, not only for information, but for resources, whether it was from food, a food bank, to a clothing closet, job training, educational programs such as the GED program, as well as a home visiting program for folks that have children under the age of 5, called Parents as Teachers. So to me, it just makes sense because I don't see that here in terms of a coordinated effort. It's just not, you know, that one entity. It's partnerships that are developed through the city, through local nonprofits, for-profit organizations that come in and provide general services to a community that's in need. So I thought that was that's why I kicked mine up to the first choice.
Mhm. Is that something you have experience with? You said in Virginia?
Yeah, the East District Family Resource Center. I served on the planning committee to develop it, and after the first director sort of retired due to health issues, I was hired as the executive director. So.
We're going to put you on the list of helping us figure this project out then. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, this is Jackie. We
Jackie,
used
go
to
ahead.
have Jacqueline Bell.
Yes, go ahead.
We used to have community resources. We had, at the time, it was called the neighborhood resources in different low income areas, and the people was not utilizing them. They had access to computers, workshops, and all that stuff, but we ended up closing them down. Actually, one used to be at Seabrook Park over there, the Seabrook Recreation Center. It used to be a recreation center, but it was Seabrook Resource Center, and people was not utilizing them. So we ended up closing a lot of the, really all of them down because nobody was coming in.
Do you know when that happened? When they?
When did we close it down? Well, they still have the one at Old Wilmington Road, but at the time I was the supervisor for the resource centers, and they still have the one at Seabrook, Old Wilmington Road, but I'm not over there anymore. So all the laptops that we had that the city provided, they came with me. So I'm not, like I said, we had all different classes coming, that was over there, and nobody would show up.
At Seabrook.
Yeah, no, and none of them. We had Westover, Myers. We pretty much had them in like low end areas. Westover, a lot of them still have the computers in there. Like Myers still have their computers. I think. Who got that? Most of the ones that we had in those areas, they still have the computers besides Old Wilmington Road. Seabrook, they just completely closed that down. I think the police department has that building now. But we have tried it, and like I said, it didn't. For a while it worked, but then after a while people stopped coming.
Why do you think that? Sorry, go ahead.
Is that just to provide computer access, or was it a program that was designed to be a little bit more involved? I think we're talking about two different things.
Well, we had computer classes and all that stuff. They actually had instructors that would come in and teach people how to do computers and all that stuff.
And that was a building that was owned by the city?
Yes.
That's the distinction. The program that I'm referring to was not something that was run by the city. It was actually governed by a board of directors that were made of community residents as well as partners. So it's a little bit different. It's called like a neighborhood resource center, family resource center. If you research it, it'll give you a lot. It's a lot of information through the Casey Foundation, which are the people that own the UPS company. It's a little different. So, and there's still some models that are around that exist, and be more than happy to get the information to anyone that's interested.
Thanks for sharing that. I see a few other hands up. Want to make sure we get to folks. Let's go to Cynthia next, please.
Yeah, I wanted to chime in on what Jackie was saying, and these centers is something that was already tried. Is there any reason, since you work with that population and group and different facilities, is there any reason why did you all, when you closed these places down, what was the reason? Why? Well, why didn't you have participants? I guess that's my question.
I'm not for sure. We tried, but nobody. We had it on the radio, the newspaper, and everything that we could do to draw people in. Some of our classes, we gave incentives, where we would, they might get a door prize and stuff like that, or a gift card. But after a while, people just stopped coming.
I asked that question because, if we're asking for something to come back that we've already had, it's important to know all the details, of what you all did and what your goals were. Did you run out of money? Was it advertised? Were there?
Nope, we didn't run out of money. It was advertised, because the centers have been around a long time. Because actually, they were there before I came, and I came here in 2000, this department in 2003. So they were here before I started with the department.
Okay.
I kind of just want to chime in just a little bit to back Jackie up, because I actually had to do kind of like an analysis of the program, and it did reach a point where the city was spending an enormous amount of money to keep the centers open and offering these programs, and they had minimal participation. They had to pay out for the teachers to come in, and sometimes, like when the teachers would show up, the students wouldn't, or we couldn't find the teachers. So I feel that if we were to like revamp something like that, it would be good to have a central location instead of several. But when you do things like that, you exclude people that are on this side of the city and this side of the city. So I don't think that it's completely closed. That is something that the city has been talking about. They've been looking into maybe revamping it, seeing how to make it better. And I'm just really happy that Jackie is here, because yes, she was over that program, so she could speak to a lot of what, did not occur. But this was very recent. And if I understand, the last one closed right before COVID. Is that correct, Jackie? Like the last one officially closed right before COVID?
Yeah, that was Old Wilmington Road, which we was housed out of the Housing Authority building. So when I left, most of all of our programs left with me. I'm no longer in that building.
Wow, that sounds interesting. That as you can see, it's first on the list here. The very same thing that you all had in place, and I just think that I still support it. Personally, I support it. Based on what the feedback from the community. We just will have to find innovative ways to bring the people in, the kids in. We just have to find innovative ways, and everybody, a lot of people have their hands.
Yeah. But now what we're doing now is we're trying to bring stuff to the recreation centers. So any programs that we're going to do them out of the recreation centers.
Okay. All right, I want to make sure we get to other people who have their hands up here. Let's go to Shamika next, please.
Yes, I was going to actually say what I see Tanisha has said in the chat about looking at case studies of similar programs and figuring out why target people aren't taking advantage of opportunities. Because to completely exclude something because of lack of participation, I mean, I understand that, but maybe looking at the data to show why they weren't taking advantage of it. Was it transportation? Was it, was it working hours? What was everything, what was offered? Because what Jeanette may be talking about may be something similar to what we already had in place, but it may be certain additions to the program that she had. So I think really look at case studies and look at the data. What can we do? So Tanisha actually was, we were on the same page with that. And I think Jeanette asked, was anyone interested in finding out any information? And yes, ma'am, I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. If we could do like a lessons learned from that experience, that could help us understand how to innovate and do it differently next time. Okay, let's go to Frederick Lowe, please. Frederick, you there?
Oh, yes, sorry. A call came through.
Okay.
Okay. So I low-key have been at the beginning of the pandemic, I thought about launching a program for the youth through my nonprofit that I was wanting to, start and launch off the ground. But when the pandemic hit, I kind of like put it all to the back burner and just been working on bits and pieces of it. And that's where my idea at the beginning of the meetings came from, about utilizing the Walmart as that, Capitol building, the resource hub. Growing up, I do remember to the T of how so many kids around me did not have the parents or the adult figures in their lives to help them initiate things. And so one question is, I'm wondering if the resource centers that was provided that we're saying it's closed down, were they adolescent friendly to where they could walk in and have a conversation with an adult as they do their guidance counselors at school, to be guided in the right direction, to sign up for the things that are being offered. Because like I said, I had a lot of friends who lived with grandma and grandpa, but grandma and grandpa didn't know how to seek these resources. So they were out doing things on their own. So the only thing that I remember of was students and friends just trying to figure out any and everything possible to just be involved in some kind of activity, hoping that they would run into the right things. So with the resource centers, if they were to open back up or to have that hub, having that activity bus that the county could probably provide to have several stops in several areas of the community, certain days of the week or every day of the week at certain times, for those kids to load up on and to drop them off at that hub to participate in these classes that are being offered. They can go in and sign up for themselves. They don't have to have the parent. Especially if the parent is not available or grandma or grandpa can't get out the house or there is no transportation to do that. Having it to where kids after school, mainly high school students and maybe middle school students, can do these things on their own with the assistance of an adult at the resource center if it's not provided at home. So I feel like that's the two biggest things is just people are not participating. Probably it's because it's not, like we said, innovative enough. So we're not thinking from the child's point of view of, okay, I'm getting out of school. Do I stay here and watch the basketball game after school and use that time? Or do I want to load up with my friends on the activity bus and go to the resource center and get the extra education? But then at the same time, we also have to think about the new generation that's coming up. They want to be incentivized. So providing those incentives as a kind of like a thank you, I'm a manager. And so having the generation that's coming behind my generation and employing them, they want you to tell them why they have to come to work. They want you to tell them why they need an education. And once you provide those incentives in the beginning, then they're saying, okay, well, I guess I can do it. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're doing the same thing when it comes to just the education field in general, is give me a reason to go to school, So opening up these resource centers, it can't just be about the education in a manner of where we're just serious, but I think we also have to provide that fun, that culture in it, to where they feel like, if I go here, I'm going to get the best experience and something that I probably can't get at home, something that I have not had in a while, just a different kind of interaction. So partnering up and collaboration is very important, whether it's with the military, whether it's with fellow state or any other place, of having many partners in the community in one spot. Because if we're just opening up a resource center and saying, hey, we're providing classes, it may not be enough, but saying, hey, we're providing classes, but afterwards we're going to have a certain restaurant come cater, this big, class, or after, 2 or 3 weeks of you attending this class, we're going to have a good group dinner or something. Providing that sense of culture will also attract I kind of tangenting, but I'm just trying to generate ideas while I'm talking. So I'm gonna just go ahead and stop.
No, thank you for that. It really hits home for me. I mean, I have a high schooler and a middle schooler, and they're interested in different things than what we were interested in. I mean, they want to learn how to do video production to be YouTube stars. They want to be able to learn how to make music online, like electronically. You know, it's just like it's a different world, and I think the programs need to evolve with where young people are. So thanks for bringing that up. Let's go to Andrea next.
Yes, hi everybody. Thanks for all your comments and all your feedback. I think that you guys are spot on, seriously. So I want to look past the experience, the prior negative experience of having a resource center that didn't work, because I really don't want to miss an opportunity here just because we are kind of like I would say we are coming from experience, right? So there's a new approach to community services, and it's called trauma-informed services. And right now we are talking about starting a center. So the way this approach, making it trauma-informed, is like looking at what's around us, assessing the needs, and like identifying what are the barriers to access. So if the center didn't work before, like we can probably look at all these case studies like Shamika was saying, like why did it not work, and then focus on removing the barriers. Like maybe childcare was a barrier because parents can't leave their kids at home. If the center provides, or if the center has an area within it for kids while the parents are taking the computer classes, maybe that would actually help working mothers or mothers that are looking for this type of training to come to the center. If there is a transportation option to bring the folks from that don't have cars, or they have health conditions that they are unable to drive, if there's a transportation option, they will be able to come to the center. And then what you guys were saying, like incentives are very important. So there's a community organization here where I live in Philadelphia. And what the community organization is doing is that they started giving business classes. There's an 8-week business program for anyone, you don't have to have a business experience. It can be a lady that is doing nails from her house, or she has been doing hair, or a barber that has been out of work due to COVID. And now they feel like they are ready to live up their dream of opening their own salon, or anyone that has been like buying things at a thrift store and then they list them on eBay. Like all of these are micro businesses, right? So this center right here in Philly, what they are doing is anyone that comes to the class and they graduate through the 8 weeks, they will help them prepare the business plan. And at the end, just by preparing the business plan, they are immediately eligible for a business loan. So through the 8-week business class, they are getting all the structure, they are getting all the I don't know, like the education of like all the how to manage their own businesses so that they don't default on their loan. And I am just citing it as an example, but it's coming from this trauma-informed approach that they took the time to look at the needs of the community, and they are removing those barriers. So if you're an immigrant and you wouldn't have access to traditional credit, through this business program, now you're able to start your own business, right? And then this translate into like sustained opportunities for more people around. So that was my comment. The bottom line is like, let's look past our past experience and see how we can make it better.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. A couple other hands up. I see Tanisha. You want to go next?
Hello, just one. Okay, I had a couple of comments, but the main one, my son is trying to talk with me. But my main comment is, thinking about being innovative. And one thing about COVID, I think, is that we had to become innovative. And what other way to be innovative is to use digital spaces. And so I was thinking that could be another way that we could look at offering resources to the community is through digital spaces. And of course, with using digital spaces, you got to think about the digital divide. So maybe resources can be used in providing internet services so that people can access online classes or Zooms or whatever it is that we provide. Because we may not be able to do face to face. We want to be innovative. We got, especially with kids. I don't know. They may have some sort of web 2.0 type tools that they use to interact on, whether it's the PS4, whatever type of medium that they're using. That's how we can engage, and the social media, whatever. So being innovative, we can think of ways we can use the internet to do that as well. Because to be honest, that's pretty much how we live our lives now. That's how we connect, is virtually. So it's just something to think about. And I know that most of us on this phone, work in this community, and the dangers in working in community is that it's easy to experience burnout and it's easy to get tired. But I think if we take a break, take a rest, and reset, research, I think we'll be energized to impact the community, because we're not just changing how the Murchison Road looks. We're trying to transform a culture, and culture is people and how they live. So it's just something to think about. But thank you for giving me a few moments.
Yeah, that's a great thing to think about. The idea of a virtual community hub or resource center, at least as one element of a larger program. Thank you for bringing that up. I think it's very timely. So let's go over Candy Scott, please.
I'm also on the Food Policy Council, and I'm on the other group that's looking at green spaces. And I think it may have been Frederick that was talking, had mentioned food about the dinner. The one thing that we've noticed at the partnership that get people to come to our events is food. And when you're looking at a space, there's this library, I believe it's in Winston-Salem. They have a cafe in the library, and people will go there just to kind of go and hang out. And then they've got this great space, open space with group seating, so people can just, hang out and talk and reflect. If they're taking classes, they can go out and reflect, they can have their coffee. But, we're talking about community gardens and, connecting different agencies and businesses with farmers. If we have, like, just thinking out of the box, like a community supported cafe within the building itself, for some of the people coming to that building, and if it was like low to no cost, that might be the only meal they get that day. So I just think, because we were just talking about innovative ways to ensure people are coming. So I think there's just opportunities with some of the other things that are going on in our community.
I love that idea. Thanks for sharing that, Candy. We'll definitely, I think our next meeting is really intended to get down into the weeds a little bit on these, at least on these three top programs or these three projects. We're already starting to do that, especially on the Community Resource Center. So we're going to take that entire meeting to kind of flesh out these projects, to also identify potential partners that we think could be brought into one or more of these projects, and then to also brainstorm resources. If people know an organization or say a grant or some other type of funding available for one or more of these particular projects, that's what we want to be doing at the third meeting, which is coming up in March. So we are right at 5 o'clock, and I just want to respect everyone's time. I see Shamika has her hand up, so we can get one or two more comments in before we break. Shamika?
Just really quick, I think one thing we should consider too with these projects is, I was speaking to someone a second ago who's in the chat, but I'm not going to call his name, but having the right people in place, because customer service is everything. And sometimes people don't come back because people, not saying in all cases, but you got to have a smiling face. You got to have somebody that's excited to be doing what they're doing, somebody who is inviting, someone who is encouraging, and that brings people back. So I think in planning all this, it's very important that we look at the people that we are going to have working and implementing these projects, because customer service is the big deal in everything that we do. That's education and everything else. People want a nice, friendly face. People want someone that, you know, is going to encourage them to come back.
100%. Definitely. Thanks for bringing that up. Okay. Any last parting thoughts before we break for the evening?
I just comment that sometimes we forget the basic rules when it comes to human services, and that's asking the participant. These should be participant driven. A lot of times we come up with our own, what we think are creative programs, and I think we mean the best, but we don't ask the people who are actually going to take advantage of the programs. And so I think you will find some engagement when you truly have participation and participant engagement.
For sure. Great point.
That was actually something theme in this meeting, the earlier work group. I think Ms. Thomas kept pressing that issue in terms of, you know, what does the community want and how to be involved. A lot of times when you're doing things for them and not with them, therein lies some of the, you know, the rub that hits the road. So again, some very distinct differences between what was presented and what, you know, what I have a background in. So, but we'll get to that. I'm trying to research it and I'll get it to Adam, and Adam, you can send it out with the email if you don't mind.
That'd be great. Absolutely.
Adam,
all right. Yeah, Lonnie, go ahead.
I want to suggest to you, so I worked on the Hope 6 project in Norfolk, Virginia. It was Broad Creek. And there was actually, you know, I think they have a civic component of Hope 6 at that point in time. And there was actually a partnership with the Boys and Girls Club, and there was a center developed as a part of that project. So you may want to take a look at that.
Yeah, that's a pretty common relationship on a lot of the Hope 6 projects, where they would build the center right in the middle of the new mixed income development. So I think that's definitely a model that seems to work pretty well for all of those involved. But thank you for bringing that to my attention. We'll look a little closer at the Norfolk example. Okay, so where we go from here, I mentioned our third meeting that will be coming up on Tuesday, March 8th. We're actually going to send out a poll to see if people want to continue to do an online meeting like this, or if we want to do an in-person meeting that day. So we'll circulate that poll. I'm actually going to be in town for that day and the day before, so I'd be available to come in person as well and kind of talk to everybody, and we can make it a hands-on meeting. But if people are more comfortable doing online, we can keep it online as well. So we'll get everybody's thoughts on that. But again, just wanted to thank everybody. This was an awesome discussion. We got a lot out of it. It was really setting the course for the strategies that are going to be in this plan. So absolutely critical. Want to thank you all. Have a great rest of your week, and we hope to see you all again very soon.
Thank you, Adam.
Good evening, everyone.
Everyone have a
Thank
nice
you, Adam.
Thanks,
Have a great
everybody.
evening, everybody.
Bye-bye.